Okay.
So
So hi, Kath. So you and I have known each other for years and years, but not so much in a professional capacity, more a we've our children are really good friends, so we know each other from around the school and that kind of thing. So I'm really excited to hear more about how Happy Homebirth Company came about,
mhm.
and just a little bit more about you in a kind of professional capacity.
Great. Well, thanks for finding the time to talk to me this morning, Mel. I'm really excited to tell you how I've come to where I'm at with Happy Homebirth Company. And it probably started about 15 years ago, really, when I studied to be a hypnotherapist over a 2 year period. And then when I started working with clients, I really didn't enjoy working with clients who were trying to lose weight and trying to give up smoking, because their motivation to do those things aren't always easy to work with. However, when I started working with women who were really keen to have positive births and had a fear of the birth process, I found these women were amazing to work with, and not just women, family couples. So I really wanted to center my work around those clients. And then really quickly, I fell into hypnobirthing, because that was just a very natural step. And then from there, I started doulaing, because I mean, it's the ultimate way, if you're not in the midwifery circles, to be that layperson at the birth, supporting both before, during, and after. It's a real privilege. So that was a very organic step for me as well. And as I was attending births, I, saw really quickly what a difference water births were making to women who were birthing at home, and also birthing in hospitals, of course, because there are pools there as well. And you could just see the difference in these women. They'd be getting to a really intense time in their journey, bringing their children earthside, and then they'd get in this pool, and it would be like everything would just kind of melt for them. It was like they just melted into the water, and I just found that incredible, really. And this was the journey I'd been on before I had my own children, so I really experienced people's journeys of pregnancy and birth before I'd had that experience myself. So as another very natural progression, I started hiring out birth pools. And when most of my clients were based around hypnotherapy and doulaing, the company that I was running then was Nurtured Beginnings. But then, as time went on, and I did have my own family, and I had 3 fantastic home water births, I realised that my commitment to doing hypnotherapy and to doing the doulaing would be a little bit more challenging with my own children. So I really, in the last 8 or 9 years, focused solely on my birth pools business, which is why that's then naturally moved into being the Happy Home Birth Company.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I love that. I love that title, and it's so the transition is so organic, isn't it? Just kind of, where we start. We never really kind of know that might be the path that we take. So it's so lovely to kind of get a bit of insight into that. So I'm really excited to know. So you mentioned your own home water births. Are you okay to share a little bit about that, and maybe, I don't know, share, maybe there might be somebody watching who's thinking about having a home water birth and might want to hear a few stories.
Sure, yeah. Well, having supported couples having their babies, both in hospital and at home, for many years before starting my own family, I had very firm ideas about what I felt would work for me. And without a doubt, it was going to be staying at home, using one of my pools, and I had built up really good connections with people in the birthy world in York, where I live. And for my first birth, we had an independent midwife with us, who's a good friend. And yeah, I mean, it was an intense experience, and having watched, years and years of really beautiful, quite calm births on like, you know, hypnobirthing videos, and both, you know, births I've been at myself, I've seen some really calm, quiet births. I did not have a calm, quiet birth. I spent a lot of time roaring, and I had a huge amount of energy that I almost needed to kind of like release as I was dilating and getting closer and closer to Florence arriving. So yeah, that's what I remember most about my daughter's arrival. There was a lot of, in fact, my vocal cords hurt more than anything else the following day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, I lost my voice. I was that kind of, ooh. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, quite typical. There was a bit of a show in the morning, and surgery started quite gently. And then by about midday, it was a really snowy February time, and our midwife was coming from a really snowy area of Yorkshire. She said, you know, if you feel like getting in the pool, get in the pool. So I got in about midday, and it was just as I'd always watched, you know, all these clients. I got in, I just went, oh, it was just having that kind of buoyancy and that support. And I needed quite a lot of support with my hips, because when I was having the surgeries, I really needed compression there, and that really helped being in the water. I didn't need the compression quite as much, which is great for my husband and Debs, because the leaning over to try and hold my hips and give me some compression was quite arduous for them, I think. And then so I laboured in water for 8 hours, and Flo arrived at bang on 10 o'clock that evening. I've got a bit of a tilted womb situation, and I've got some scar tissue, so I don't find the kind of like the final stage particularly easy. So I dilate beautifully. Transition was okay, but then I spent a good kind of couple of hours trying to actually bring her forth. But she arrived in the water. My husband was also in the pool, so it would have been a regular size pool, because he was in there too, and he caught her and put her onto me. And we've got some lovely pictures. My daughter's favourite part of the whole story is she immediately did a big poo all over me, which she loves to tell people about her birth story. And then I stayed in the pool a while, then I got out, you know, placenta hadn't arrived, and placenta arrived a little while later. So it was a very, very intense experience. I used to describe it as kind of, it felt like an express train was kind of passing through my body, and I didn't have to engage. I just had to hold on. You know, I just had to, or let go, really.
Yeah.
Really, it was the letting go. But I didn't have to engage with the process, because it was just happening to me. And I just had to have faith that it was happening in the way it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Which is quite different to how my third birth went, because by that point I was kind of expecting the same kind of like, you know, express train feeling, just a question of like holding on and letting go. But actually I needed to work a lot harder bringing my boys into the world, because I dilated quite efficiently, but my surgeries were kind of quite on and off, and I think I didn't have great positioning. They were both back to back, or I say both, all three were back to back. So with my boys, our lovely midwife Deb, she wasn't available. She wasn't in the country, and I was on the radar with the NHS, but they didn't really want to support my ways of having a kind of quite a quiet birth and no intervention, maybe them sitting in the room next door, and I could tell that my midwife wasn't comfortable with this. And I knew that having a midwife that wasn't comfortable with the way I wanted to do things would really distract me at the time it was happening. So we'd kind of at that point planned for a free birth with some doula support. So I had a lovely doula, Hannah, who'd been my doula mentor. So we knew each other really well. And she was there for both my son's births, and they were really amazing experiences. And I had to kind of, you know, both times I was in the pool, and it was really interesting. I had to work a lot more on them, because the surgeries didn't happen as regularly, and when they did, they were like some big ones and some small ones. And, you know, Hannah had to kind of look at me and kind of go, you need to engage with this, Cathy. What do you need to do? And I was like, I need to stand up. And she was like, that's what you need to do. So I kind of, I stood up and I used my power and I kind of concentrated on the babies coming down. And yet, it was quite a long second stage, but, both amazing. They were both kind of came into the world very, very calmly. And, the babies were quite calm. I was again, I was quite noisy. But yeah, both really, really amazing experiences. Yeah, and I learned so much each time. I mean, how different they all were was incredible, really. I mean, just like how different children are when they start to grow up. I'm like, oh, they're so different. Like, yes, of course they are. They're different people, and they're different births, and they're different birth journeys. So, yeah, I think I would be quite a different doula now, having had the experience of my own 3 children and my own 3 births.
Yeah.
So, that might be interesting for the future. But that's how my birth stories looked.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. And thank you so much for sharing. Like, it just makes me feel so special to kind of, I almost feel like a part of it. Like, like I can imagine when you say like the holding on, but the letting go. And that's often such a challenge for people, I think, is like getting out of your head. But then so interestingly, like you say with your boys, you actually had to really engage more with like, what is it that I need? So yeah, really trusting yourself to kind of be guided by what it is that your body is telling you, I guess.
And I think it's really interesting you bring up trust there, Mel, because I think I was in an optimal position to have the trust, having supported about 17, 18 births before having my own children. So I had that confidence and I had that trust because I'd been there and I'd seen it myself with my own eyes. And I do think it's a really big ask to expect women and husbands and partners to have that confidence and to have that trust when they don't have that personal, well, most people don't have the personal experience of watching birth unfold in a very natural, organic way. They see what they see on EastEnders and they see the dramatizing of it on Coronation Street, and it's very, I think it's a really big commitment to be able to set aside all the cultural influences and just have that belief that that trust your instincts and to have that belief and to step forward and to I think it's a really big thing. And to be able to support women and couples to do that, I really enjoy that. I have to do it. I do that a lot because people get in touch and they inquire about pools, and sometimes they say, oh, I'm really keen, but we're not sure yet because my husband's not so keen. And I talk a lot about that with clients because and sometimes it's the husbands that are booking pools and they're like, we're not 100%, but we're going to have it there just in case. And I quite often talk through those things with the husbands if that's what they'd like to kind of get some insight on, because my own husband, he was quite happy to have an independent midwife there the first time, but he admits there was an additional layer of anxiety for him when we free birthed, because although I knew it was right for me not to have a midwife there who maybe didn't support my decisions, it felt like an onus of responsibility on my husband, who felt the buck stopped with him, and if something went wrong, he would be the one that would feel responsible for it. So there's a lot of decision making around home birthing, about water birthing and free birthing. So I'm really happy to be in a position to help people with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just thinking back to kind of where it all started with the hypnotherapy, and you kind of introducing the idea of how our subconscious is programmed just through watching, what goes on TV or hearing other people's experiences. And let's face it, people love to share a scary story. It's like,
absolutely,
tell us the positive stuff. We want to hear the positive stuff. But I guess it's about the reprogramming and actually like really digging deep and saying, okay, do I trust myself? Where do I need to do some work? It's interesting when you say, or not interesting, but I kind of chuckled to myself when you said with Florence's birth, how it was really intense, obviously, but how your vocal cords hurt the next day. When I did a hypnobirthing course with my second, I was so noisy. I made so much noise, it was unbelievable. And I thought to myself, but like, this isn't what I've seen. Like hypnobirth, when I went to the hypnobirthing class and you watch all the hypnobirthing videos, and these people are just so calm and centered and like don't make a noise, and and being supporting other couples who use hypnobirthing techniques as well. It's it doesn't always have to be quiet.
No, not at all. No, I mean, it's a spectrum, isn't it? It's on a spectrum, and there are people right towards the end of that spectrum that achieve that calm, very inward birth. But no, that was not my experience.
That's not what your body needed. Your body felt like a freight train running through it, and there was all the soiling energy, and it needed to be released. So and trusting that and going with that.
Yeah. My husband likes to tell people that during one of the births, I think it'll be one of my sons, I kind of went, "Where's my calm, quiet birth?" with a bit of swearing in there as well. At the point I was going through transition, it's like, this next time I'm going to have a calm, but it's just not the way I birth, and I've kind of accepted. I mean, I said after my third, if there's a fourth child in my life, I'm just going to accept that the tilt of my womb, my back-to-back babies, I'm just going to have a really powerful, loud birth, and I'm just going to accept it from now.
And that's okay.
And that's okay,
Oh, amazing. So also you mentioned a regular size pool that your husband could get into the pool with you. So do you have let's talk a little bit about the pools and the equipment, and kind of top tips for clients that might be useful for them, and when they're thinking about hiring a pool from you.
Sure. So I only stock the birth pool in a box pools because I find them really easy to put up and take down, and in terms of hygiene, the disposable kits are brilliant. So there are two sizes. There's the regular size and the mini size. The actual dimensions are on my website. The regular size is great if you have lots of space. And if you wanted the option of somebody being able to get into the pool with you, you definitely want to go with the regular one. Mm-hmm. There's also an advantage with the regular one of feeling that you're in the middle of the pool and people can't quite get at you. You felt that with like there was this me, and then there was water, and then there was pool.
Yeah.
But with my sons, I birthed in the mini pool. And actually I really liked the way I felt quite cocooned in that pool. I liked the way that I could actually stretch out, and there was water, but then the pool was there quite quickly, and I used that quite a lot to kind of push against the side of the pool. And I liked how kind of enclosed it felt in the mini pool, and I didn't feel it made any difference in terms of the space, in terms of the babies coming out. I mean, there was plenty of space in both pools for that. An advantage to the mini pool over the regular pool is how quickly it fills. So if you've got a combi boiler, permanent hot water, this isn't an issue for you. But I always ask clients, if you have a hot water tank which will drain and then you need to reheat the water in it, I'd consider a mini pool, because then you can reach the minimal level that you can then get into much quicker than you would the regular pool.
Okay.
And something else to consider, which I don't think many people need to consider, but the regular pool takes a lot longer to empty as well. Mm-hmm. Now, I can't imagine people need to kind of get out of the pool and then empty it particularly quickly, but it can take kind of, depending how much water's in it, 3 or 4 hours, whereas the mini pool holds less water, so that drains quicker.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that's useful if you're on a water meter.
Very good point. Yes. Yeah. Very useful if you're on a meter. Yes.
Yeah. So that's interesting, Kath. So was there a particular reason that you chose not to birth the boys in regular size pools, or was it just kind of what the stock you had on hand, or what was the change there?
I think we expected it to be the same pool that Flo had arrived in, but then I hired it out 2 weeks before I was. So that's it. Florence arrived at bang on 40 weeks. And I went into labour with Chester bang on 38 weeks, which was a day that my friend had organised a surprise baby shower for me. A surprise blessing way, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chester's always been very quick to arrive places. So that started the day he was born. So I think we just got the mini pool out because it was the first one my husband picked up from where I keep my stock. And I think because we thought things might move quite quickly, we knew we could get it filled up quickly.
Okay.
And we had a smaller space. We'd moved house at this point, so we had a smaller space for it. So yeah, it ticked all the boxes for why I would use a mini pool.
Yeah.
But then we'd moved house again by the time I had my third child, and then I had the option of regular or mini, and I opted to actually have the mini pool at that point.
Yeah.
I think because I just really enjoyed that cocooning feeling with the mini pool with Chester, and I knew, I was expecting my third child to whiz out. I'd sneeze and he'd just pop out. So I'd have to have a pool that would fill very quickly. Not that I needed that.
I was going to say that wasn't the case. It sounds like.
No. I mean, I've been to births. I've arrived at a birth, and 40 minutes later, there's been a baby, and that's happened to me a couple of times as a doula.
Yeah.
So, but no, that is not how I birth. So yeah, we'd have had plenty of time to fill the regular pool each time, but no, the mini pool suited me really well for the boys.
Yeah. Okay, that's useful. So you're a bit of an eco warrior. And so you mentioned the birth pool in a box is your preferred option because for various reasons, but you mentioned as well the disposable kits. So talk to me a little bit about disposable kits.
Let me just make sure my phone's not going to come on again. So the disposable kits, they include the liner, a cover. The cover is really helpful because it's heat retaining. The only area of the pool that loses heat from the water is the surface area, because the rest of it's insulated by air because it's inflated. So the cover's a bit like a big shower cap, which you put over the top, and then if you're in and out, which I was with one of my births, I was a bit in and out, so we put the cover on each time. That was helpful. Then there's the hose, and the hose is a non-toxic hose. It's important. A thermometer, so you can keep the optimal temperature in the pool. And then a non-slip ground sheet, which I've had people before say, oh, I don't need the ground sheet, I've got tarpaulin. Disaster. You get tarpaulin wet and you're waddling around with a big belly, with a baby about to come out of it, you slip over, that's a disaster. So the non-slip, and there's lots of other things you can use as non-slip. You can turn rugs over, but don't ever use anything slippy or tarpaulin to put wet feet on. Okay. So they're the things that are in my disposable kit. And then I also offer, because what I found over the years was, for whatever reason, people didn't use all the kit, or they didn't use the pool at all. And then they'd have a brand new baby, but they'd also would have purchased this disposable kit. And I'm sure people think, oh, well, if I still have the kit, I'll just sell it, or I'll pass it on, and it just becomes a kind of a job that I'm sure people that have just had a baby don't really want. Yeah. So I started offering Happy Homebirth insurance, which meant that if you took the insurance out, if you had any pieces of your disposable kit unused or not open from its packet, then I would give you the money back for those parts of the kit, which it just meant people then had that confidence of saying, right, we'll take the kit and I know we'll get the money back for it. If we don't end up using it for whatever reason. It just took kind of one extra job away from people, really. And it also meant that if people were wobbling about whether they were actually going to be able to have their home water birth, because of various reasons, people don't sometimes know until right towards the end of their pregnancy, it kind of took that worry away as well. They had everything they needed, and if they needed their money back on it, that's fine too.
Yeah, great. Amazing. So I know you haven't been doulaing for a while, but obviously you're still like in the birth scene because of the Happy Home Births and all the families that you are engaging with and kind of supporting through the hiring of the birth pools from you. But I wonder if you've got any thoughts, you may or may not have any thoughts on home birth closures at the moment. Do you have any thoughts or feelings on that?
I mean, it's really sad, Mel. I mean, the pandemic and everything that's meant for people. I mean, I had a huge surge on birth pool inquiries and bookings last year, because people, obviously would prefer not to birth in a hospital where they might be exposed to germs.
Yeah.
And I had families, couples, women who would never have considered home birth contacting me for advice and support. And I really thought, wow, this might be a tiny silver lining to having to go through this like horrific pandemic. People are going to have their minds open to doing stuff in different ways. But then I had a huge number of pools cancelled, quite last minute, because it felt to me that a lot of women were really put off the idea of just home birth, and that they might not get the support, they wouldn't get the support, that the closures would be in place. And to have that kind of insecurity about where you're going to be having your child that late in pregnancy, it's really, really destabilizing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of couples just wanted to know, are we going to get support for our home birth? And if we're not, we're just not going to have our dreams pointed in that direction. We'll just accept the fact we're going into hospital. Because to not know until you make that call is really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And I think in other times, couples would be kind of supported to be quite firm about maybe staying at home and, not moving and just having somebody come out to them. But during these times of people, low staffing numbers, and I mean, you can't really do that, because there quite literally isn't anybody to come out to you, and they're going to send an ambulance. And although, the ambulance service is incredible, the ambulance service is not who you want when you're having your baby.
No, you don't want 4 paramedics standing around observing you. Yeah, they are great when they are needed.
Situation.
It's not an emergency situation. Yeah. It's not going to do much for your adrenaline levels.
Exactly.
Staying nice and low.
Yeah. So I think it's really sad, and I think as well the continuity of care has been really shocking. I mean, I've had lots of women saying that they've seen 3 or 4 different midwives over the course of their pregnancy, and then right towards the end they've maybe been advised to see a consultant over something, and the consultant said, oh no, there's absolutely no way you'll be home birthing because of this, or because of this, and they've gone through their whole pregnancy not having known that there was some issue due to some kind of health complaint or something in a previous birth. And then right towards the end, you're talking like 36, 37 weeks. Yeah. They're then having to get their head around the fact that actually the plans they had in place, that they're out the window, and they're now having to make provision for maybe children or pets or whatever, because they're going to have to go into hospital and have their baby, and it's not what they expected. So yeah, I really feel if there'd been a better continuity of care over this time, it would have made a big difference to people. I mean, and don't get me started on measurements and scans and
don't you worry.
Gosh. I mean, I'm not sure if this is a York thing, Mel, but the amount of people that are like, their babies are too big, but then their babies are too small, and their babies turn out, they arrive and they're just the right size for that mum and that baby. Yeah. So there's a lot of fear towards the end of pregnancy. I've locally, and it's really destabilizing, and it's really difficult for couples to get their head around, especially if you're if you're a mum and you're really set on having a home birth, and then just towards the end you start going to appointments, or you start getting feedback about how maybe there are contraindications or staffing issues. I mean, even if it doesn't destabilize you as a mum, your partner, maybe your own mum will have opinions on that, and you just don't feel the carpet being pulled from under your feet at that point. Is really, really difficult. And even if the plan that you put in place goes ahead, that anxiety, it's a real shame, and I see it happening a lot more now than it ever has in the last 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
What do you say, Kath? What I'm trying to encourage people to do is still, if they want to use water in their labour, to still hire a pool, because most of their labour is going to happen at home. They don't want to be in hospital until they've right at the end if they've decided not to free birth and the home birth team is closed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just thinking, like, do you think it's useful for the birth pool to still be used at home for the labor and then for them to transfer into hospital? That's my one thing that's kind of coming up. And the other thing is that there's been a number of families that I've supported over, recently, where they haven't, for whatever reason, like you say, had the home water birth that they had dreamt of and planned for.
Mm-hmm.
And so what sharing with them is now, and I think you've mentioned it to me before, just in kind of conversation briefly, is having almost like a rebirth. So once the baby's born, having the pool at home and the opportunity for the family to kind of recreate what they had hoped for. So can you kind of talk me through that briefly? Are you able to? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the question on whether you should have a pool for just labouring. I think a lot of people are told that if they are planning to have their child in the hospital, then they can labour in a bath or in the shower at home. And I have personal experience of getting in a bath before getting in a pool. And unless you've got one of those kind of corner baths, which are quite wide as well as long, if you've just got the average bath, I personally don't think it's a great place to be comfortable whilst labouring, because you can't spread your legs enough. You can't get that distance between your legs. And obviously there's like a human being trying to get down between there. So I find, in 2 of my labours, I've hopped in the bath before the pool was ready. And each time I just had to get out because the space was just really unhelpful to me. So I would say if you're thinking, oh, well, I'll just get in the bath in labour and then I'll go to the hospital, and I would be open to the idea of having a pool for that, because you will labour far more comfortably and more efficiently if you were in a pool.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you just have to have everything ready that you need to be able to get out of that pool. So you'd want like your towels and maybe your robe that you're going to get dry in, and then obviously a change of robe and clothes to wear in order to transfer if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
But it's also, I would say, good to have in mind that if you do find yourself in a really comfortable place in labour, it's not usual for you to say, oh, and now I'd like to get into a car and go to hospital. And I've had this happen with multiple doula clients where they've known their local hospital, maybe they've worked there, they've known the labour ward, and they have really positive feelings and they have no qualms, they live nearby, they definitely want to birth in hospital. And I said, well, should we have a pool just in case? No, very happy to go to the hospital. And then this happened to the same lady twice. In labour, just don't want to leave the house. Like my good friend of mine, she was just very comfortable. That's on the toilet, and she didn't want to get off the toilet. She was just so calm and and just breathing. And she's just said, I'm not going to go to the hospital. I'm going to stay here. And the problem with that was that we weren't booked in with the Homebirth team, and they wouldn't come out because we weren't on their radar. So that I always tell couples, you're much better to be on the radar with the Homebirth team, book in with the Homebirth team, and then you have the options to do whatever you want at the time you want to do it.
Absolutely.
However, if you are not booked in for the Homebirth, you're not on their radar, and then they're much less likely they just won't come out to you because they're not prepared for you.
Yeah.
And obviously the Homebirth team, the community midwife team is quite small, and there's a good chance that they'd be out of birth anyway at that point. So if you book in for Homebirth, then you have the options of birthing for as long as you want at home and then transferring in should you wish to.
Yeah.
And I think that's an optimal position to be in, because then you have all the options open to you. Yeah. And that's what I usually advise couples to go with. When it comes to having planned either a home water birth or even a hospital water birth, and the birth journey hasn't worked out that way, or if the birth has been traumatic for whatever reason, really, then, and I learned a lot about this during my hypnotherapy, then you can, like you said, Mel, you can recreate a situation that will almost dull down the actual experience that happened, and it's called it's like a rewind technique, really. You're recreating, you're making the situation that you planned for. So you're having the experience, you're creating the stimulus, and you're making a memory, you're creating a neurological pathway in your mind, which will override the intensity of the traumatic experience that possibly happened. So this is called not the rewind technique, this is called having a rebirth. And I've supported a few women stroke couples on rebirth experiences. So what that involves is basically, thinking about how you'd pictured that birth working out. And it doesn't have to be in a pool, actually, a rebirth. It can actually be in a bath, but it's quite unusual to have planned a home water birth in a bath. So if you planned a home water birth, it's optimal to have the pool, because that's how you would have pictured your baby arriving. And basically you set up, you put your candles out and your affirmations and whatever you're going to have, whatever you're going to be smelling, and you set up the whole room as you'd plan to have welcome your baby. And then you have your new little baby, and you basically get in the pool, and it's almost like a ceremony. You kind of you rebirth your baby, and it's a really, really powerful experience. The earlier that it can be done, the more powerful I think it is. But that's not to say if your baby was like a few weeks or a few months old. The earlier, then it's easier with the baby underwater coming out than if they're a bit older. But it's a really, it's powerful in terms of that kind of trauma, almost just releasing. There's a release at the point that these new experiences and these new memories are created. It's really, really special. And and I've supported quite a few couples to make that happen. So I'm very happy to talk to people about that, or to message with people. So if anybody did have questions about rebirth, they're very welcome to get in touch.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I could talk to you all day.
Now I have some top tips. You did ask me for top tips, and I haven't told you those. So some of my top tips would be, when I had Florence, I decorated my whole room with fairy lights and affirmations and pictures and all the things I thought would inspire me in labour. And then I spent 8 hours on my hands and knees looking at the bottom of a very empty pool. So now I would advise to put pictures or affirmations or anything that inspires you at the bottom of your pool, and put your liner on top, because your liner is see-through. So you can still see all those things at the bottom of the pool. And the other thing that I found very useful, which was a tip from my doula, is the kind of the maternity pads that you wear afterwards. If you have one of those maternity pads and you put whatever oil you want on it, on the pad, and you stick the pad on the inside of the pool just above the water line, that means that during labour you have the option of kind of floating over and really inhaling whatever's on there, and then floating away. But the heat from the pool actually disperses the air, the oil, very close to where you are. So you might have an oil burner in the room as well, but to have the option of a really kind of deep filling of your lungs with that smell, I found that really helpful.
Oh, amazing. I've not heard of that before. That is a good tip. Okay, well, thank you so much for chatting with us this morning. And so I'll put the link to the Happy Homebirth Company wherever this video is going to go. And yeah, hopefully the clients from All Things Birth and Beyond will find it useful as well. So thanks, Kath, and I'll speak to you soon.
Great, thanks for your time, Mel. See you.